If there's something strange and it don't look good, who you gonna call? Live from across the plain, still struggling through Google Hangouts, comes the coolest guys you've ever met. Oops, wrong show. Comes the guys who may be weird, who may not be mainstream, and who may believe in things many might call crazy. But these guys are after the truth, and sometimes the truth is the craziest thing you've ever heard.
Mr. Mayor, come take a look at this.
Wow. Oh, what is it? Have you ever seen anything like that? Somebody get me the Globe Busters.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Globe Busters.
Welcome everybody to Globe Busters, Flat Earth in the Beginning. I am your host, Bob, Xanadude60, and we have a great show for you today. And also we have a little bit of an addendum to the show today since Jaron was unable to get his live stream going with his interview. We're going to go ahead and let him do that right here on this channel. So Jaron, take it away.
Hey, thanks a lot, Bob. And sorry to everyone that wasn't able to watch. We were having some issues. I don't know what was happening. We were showing that we were live and you guys weren't getting to see it. So luckily we've got Cindy who has stayed with us for this hour of technical difficulties. And she is happy to do so, right, Cindy? But we're happy that you're joining us, and you are a former NASA employee. So why don't you just start out by telling us who you are and how you got your job with NASA, how long ago, and what you did there.
All right. So my legal name is actually Cynthia. So if you guys are looking for an employee named Cindy Holland, it would have been Cynthia Holland. Just threw that out there because somebody posted on that. In 1996, I was working as a janitor for the Air Force at Edwards Air Force Base. And some of my friends that I knew at the Air Force Base told me that NASA was hiring women and Black people and suggested that I apply. I had 2 years of IT business college under my belt. And so I applied for the position. I got an interview. And I was hired within just a few days. I worked as a contractor. I was not a direct hire for NASA, but I did the same type of work. I worked for a contractor called Woodside Summit Group. And this was at Dryden Flight Research Center from 1996 to 2000. Basically, IT entry-level computer support person. So, got to do some cool things, learned a lot of stuff. I had a lot of fun.
When you got hired there, were you interviewed then by NASA or you were interviewed by the...
Woodside Summit Group was the contractor that I worked for. My direct boss was a NASA employee. He was not Woodside Summit.
And so when you applied at NASA. I guess I don't understand how that works.
This was a while ago, so things were done differently. This was in the base paper. The Air Force Base had jobs posted. So I remember right, there was nothing computer related about applying. I just sent in my resume. I don't even remember now how I sent it in. technology wasn't around like it is today. So I didn't have like a system that I could have applied through.
Right.
I mailed my resume in.
What was your daily work? Like, let's say you go in, but what did your work consist of?
I had my own office. I logged trouble calls. So if somebody had an issue with their computer, they would email me or call me, and I would log their trouble calls, and I would either find the right person to go out and fix the issue, or I myself would go fix the issue. I was the retrospect computer backup person for the entire site. So each night, the system called Retrospect would back up the computer systems. And so if somebody lost something, data, then they would contact me and tell me what they were missing. And I would go back into my servers and I would find whatever it was they were looking for, and I would send it back to them encrypted. I did a lot of software installing, created classrooms from the ground up, so put together computer systems from the ground up, all the hardware. And then we had something called a plotter. And so when the SR-71 would fly, the data would come back and it would go through this system called a plotter. And I was the one who ran that system.
Okay. And you said you did that for 4 years, if I heard you correct?
Correct, 4 years.
And what site were you at? I know they have quite a few.
So this was in California, Edwards Air Force Base, and it was, at the time, it was called Dryden Flight Research Center. I know they've changed the name to something else since then, but I don't know what it is anymore.
Okay. Sounds great. And then I know the article, if people want to, I'll actually share the screen. So this is the article that I found you on. And it basically says, former NASA employee, the moon landings were faked. How did this article come about, or how did it's written by Jackie DeVoy? And I'm wondering, did she contact you? Did you contact her? How did this article get written?
Okay, so I've been a flat earther since last May, and I'm part of, a ton of flat earth groups on Facebook. And she's also on one of the Facebook groups, and she saw I posted randomly about my prior employment with NASA, and she contacted me and said, "Did you really work for NASA?" And I said, "Yes." And so she and I became friends, and she's a writer for her magazine, and asked if she could do an article on me and if she could get some actual quotes. And I said, absolutely. We went over all the things that she wanted to put in the article, and some of it's a little bit stretched, but I think, it's catchy. So
now the image that I'm looking at now that everyone can see, it says Cindy landed a job at NASA in 1996, and it shows you in a room, I guess. Can you describe what we're seeing there in that picture?
Okay, so the picture of me standing on the wing of the SR-71 is actually from 1997, 1998.
Mm-hmm.
The other picture of me is from Lockheed Martin. My career with NASA ended after 4 years, and I went to work for the Air Force. I worked for the Air Force for about 5 years, and then I worked for Lockheed Martin. And so the picture of me standing in a room, that's actually not with NASA.
The one where you're showing the peace sign.
Correct.
That's with Lockheed
Martin.
Okay, and then the one that you're on, the SR-71, is that in some sort of hangar? It's kind of hard to tell what's going on there.
Yes, that's in the hangar at Dryden Flight Research Center, and we had the last few SR-71s that flew at our facility.
Okay. And then I'm just reading some of the quotes here. I see you talking about the SR-71 flights. And then you talked about here, you said that your office was next to a photo lab, and that's where the photographic history was kept. And it was off limits to most NASA employees unless you were escorted. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Because I was right next to the photo lab, I became friends with all the guys who worked in there.
Mm-hmm.
One day, two of the guys who worked in there, I don't remember their names, but they were assistants. They weren't actual photographers. They were the guys who helped once say some pics came back from a jet. These would have been the guys who would have helped sort it all out. So I left my office, and they were in front of me walking towards the NASA cafeteria, and I heard them saying, "I can't believe people believed in the moon landings," and they were laughing. And I was, of course, curious why anybody would say that. This was way before I ever thought the moon landings were fake. And I just kept listening to them, and they were not hiding it. They were being loud enough for me to hear. And they were laughing and making fun of people who believed in the moon landings.
Did you encounter that any other time when you worked there, or the whole time you were there was just this one particular conversation?
That was the only thing I heard while I was there. I did hear an engineer that I worked with at Lockheed Martin. I didn't hear. He told me. He said the Earth is flat, and this was in 2000. That would have been 2007. So he told me that.
All right, so that's
a very smart man.
That's an interesting story. So start, at the beginning of that. So what was the surrounding situation, or kind of what was the context for someone to tell you that in 2000 something?
So this would have been my Lockheed Martin employer, and this was on the F-117 program in Palmdale. I worked on the flight line, and one of my engineers, super smart guy, I do remember his name, but I won't be saying any names. I don't want to get anybody in trouble or
that's
angry
fine.
with me. So he told me that the Earth was flat, and he didn't give me a lot of information. So in my head, I pictured the typical flat Earth where the water's coming off the edges. And so I kind of laughed, and I said, well, that doesn't even make sense. How can you even believe that? And so he didn't give me enough information for me to follow through with researching it.
Right.
But he definitely believed it. He wasn't kidding. He was very serious. He was a very smart man. So I thought it was odd.
Yeah, I would definitely think that. So was there something that led to that conversation, or is this something he just out of the blue just said, the Earth's flat? Do you remember?
We were friends. So, and we worked together every day for, I don't know, I was there for several years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the circumstances that started the conversation. It was a while ago.
I guess, is it, so in your time with NASA and Lockheed, which, total would be about, 9 years then?
So 4 years with NASA, 5 years with the Air Force, 2 years with Lockheed, and then I went back to work for the Air Force again for another 2 years. I worked in the safety office and then on the F-35 program. And then I left the Air Force again, and I went to Lockheed Martin in Fort Worth, and that was my final. So that's a long stint.
Okay, and just so I know for myself and others who might not completely understand how this works, when you work in a job like that, I know that at times they tell you things that you're not supposed to repeat. Each time that happens, do they make you sign a non-disclosure agreement, or is it something that is done at the beginning of your employment with a kind of blanket statement that everything that you find out here, or everything that we tell you cannot be spoke about? Can you kind of just tell us how that works exactly?
So depending on the program, with NASA, I never signed anything. I think Privacy Act was the highest level within that position. I had to have a secret clearance for the Air Force, of course, and I wasn't briefed into anything with my first 5 years in the Air Force. When I went to Lockheed Martin, I did have to get briefed in, and I did have to sign documents that said I would not release any information on specific things that I would see or know. That continued for the rest of my career. Each program will have its own brief. So you're in briefed. And then, of course, when you leave a program, you're out briefed as well.
Explain that, I guess. What does that mean exactly? What's an out brief?
So
just for an example.
You're leaving a program and you're basically signing paperwork that says anything that I knew during my time on this program is kept to myself. I will not disclose any of this. basically.
And what is the penalty? Just I'm wondering.
It probably varies. I don't remember specifically. I know that there's imprisonment and fines for sure, but it probably depends on what the program was and what would have been revealed.
Right. No, and I'm not asking you to say whether this happened or not, but I guess more of a general statement is in one of those. Could they ask people to do something illegal, or how do I word that better? When they sign these non-disclosure, could it be possible that something illegal is being hidden, or for the most part, is it just proprietary secrets? Like, for instance, what kind of engines they're using on a particular plane. I guess for us that are out of the loop, I'm just wondering, how deep these non-disclosures can go. For the most part, maybe you only saw, information that was kept because it needs to be kept. Like, for instance, engines that we're using or particular fuel types. I could see that being an important secret to keep from other countries or other space agencies.
Right.
But I'm wondering if there's a possibility that this also might include other things that, maybe people would see as.
I myself never saw anything that was illegal in anything that I worked on.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that I knew of was specifically just secret because it was secret.
Right.
Nothing illegal. Not to say that since then, I've become very aware of what's going on, and I've become a truther and a conspiracy researcher. So I've researched pretty much every rabbit hole there is, and my own opinion is that there are things that are going on that are really, really bad that are being kept general public and probably even from most government employees. Most government employees would not know.
Right.
I only have theories. So.
Now, I'm sure you've heard people, if you've been researching this, you've heard people, refer to the things that NASA does as compartmentalized.
Yeah.
Can you attest to that and talk to us a little bit about people's jobs, if they were really centered around one particular task, or were many people multifaceted and doing a lot of different things? And just kind of tell us a little bit about the idea of compartmentalized.
It's definitely compartmentalized. And I can tell you that I have a lot of friends who work for NASA still. They don't know. They don't see it. They wouldn't see it unless they were at the top. You wouldn't even think about it. It's not something that would be on your radar unless you were a truther or a conspiracy researcher. You go, you do your work, you do your job, you do the best you can, and you try to climb the ladder. That's in any corporation, that's kind of your goal. I don't think most people think about the shape of the earth.
No. Would you say that that the work environment was, and you had jobs before that and after that you might be able to tell us? I mean, was it a normal employment, or was there extra perks for working with NASA that maybe kind of surprised you, or anything that kind of sticks out about that job versus your others? Or was it basically like a regular job? You went there, people got there on time. If they didn't get there on time, they were handled.
Sure.
Is it like that kind of situation?
Yeah. It was a typical corporation type of atmosphere. The perks it was an adventure all the time. It wasn't just go in and do your work. We had events, and we had, I don't know, it's unique for sure, especially if you believe in what NASA does.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I did, I was, it was exciting. So you have to be there on time, and you leave at a certain time, and you have to ask for time off just like any other job.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to put my son in school at the Air Force Base, which was really neat because I worked out there.
Mm-hmm.
That was a perk, but really nothing more than that. I got to meet some really neat people.
Mm-hmm.
So some really big people, and
like who, astronauts you mean,
people.
or
I'm trying to remember who it was that came to visit the base, but yeah, it might have been Buzz. I'm trying to remember now who it was. It was a while ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess the reason I asked that is because I've always wondered if, if NASA made it a fun place to work, kind of on purpose, just if basically they're hiding what they're ultimately doing. And I am in agreement with you that it would be only the very highest positions if even they knew. And, because a lot of people, will come and say, well, there's no way all these scientists could be lying. And I actually agree with that. I don't think all the, scientists are lying. I think that they all are building satellites and they're building these equipment, and they are, setting the computers, and they're really working hard on this
Right.
operation. And I just think when it gets to the top, that they can return data to the computers that would make anybody who has built the satellite assume that they're getting real data. Not
Correct.
right. Is that how kind of you see it? That when you
That's
watch,
how I see it.
right? So you don't think there's any rover on Mars, for example?
No, I don't believe that Mars is a planet. I don't believe that planets exist. I believe there's the stars.
Yeah, me too. So that's awesome. So I mean, and you said that you have some friends with NASA, and none of them can see it. Have you tried talking to anybody about it?
I have not personally tried to. I have been posting a lot of stuff on my Facebook. I've kind of gone through a couple of waves. When I first came on board to Flat Earth last May, I was just engrossed in it for probably a good 2 months. And then I branched out and I started to meet other Flat Earthers via Facebook, via YouTube. And I didn't share anything for a long time. And then I started to share stuff, and the pushback was really bad. Most of my family is not speaking to me. I had a hard time with that.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my coworkers, Air Force, Lockheed, NASA, that are my friends on Facebook, have not commented on anything I've posted.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped for a short period of time. I unfriended a whole bunch of my Flat Earth friends, and that's why I'm telling you guys, friend me again, because I unfriended you because I was trying to fix the family issue, but it didn't work. So I decided I'm going to be who I am. I'm a truther, and I can't help but share the truth. It's just who I am.
And you probably can attest to the same thing we all can say. And I think this goes for everybody who's become a flat earther, that we see the people on the outside, our family, our friends, and part of you probably wishes in a small way that you could go back to being who you were before, but it's so blatant once you look into it. Wouldn't you agree that you cannot go back? It's not a matter of, oh, well, maybe I could go back to believing in the globe again. But once you've actually done the research, is that what you would say, that it's almost impossible for you to unsee what you've seen?
It is impossible. I know what I know, and I've done so much research, and I can tell you that whether the earth is flat or not, I can't prove it, but I can prove that what we're being told is a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And all you have to do is take a little bit of time, sit down and look at the numbers and look at the stuff we're being told, and none of it's adding up, and none of it is provable. None of it's real. So I do know for sure, 100%, that we're being lied to, and that's enough. That's enough for me. If somebody's lying to me, then not to me, to the whole world.
Right.
Then I can't trust that source. And so we can't see our whole earth because they won't let us see it. So I don't know. I think it's flat. I believe it is, but I can't prove it.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of us are in the same boat, and I'm spending every day looking for that way to prove it, because what's happened is people have this belief in space that we were all taught as children, and I think sometimes they fail to realize that everybody who's a flat earther was taught the same thing in school. So it's not like we all
Right.
popped out of a cave and said the earth's flat. that we all were, we're taught just like everyone else. So we understand that, a lot of people come at us with, don't you know this and don't you know that? And it's like, yeah, we were taught all that. That's fine. The problem becomes when you look into it, like you said, just spend that time looking at it, and you will realize that the one thing that's missing from the whole idea of the globe is the word proof. That anything that is real, anything that you can prove, it has evidence all over the place. And the one thing about the globe is it's just explained away, and there's so many things wrong with the globe that people just don't look at. They just assume the globe works perfectly, everything works perfect, it is the way it is. Boats go over the edge, everything. But really, when you start looking into it, from seasons to the sun is set, we can see it, but they say it's actually already gone over the horizon. There's so many things that are just not right, including all the numbers with how fast we're spinning, how fast we're flying.
Huge.
Huge.
The numbers are, that's huge to me.
Yeah, it's huge to me too. I mean, when I started looking into the whole idea of the speeds that we were going, and I kind of realized, well, there's no proof of any of that. It's a mathematical equation that works, but it doesn't mean that that's what's happening. And that's why, when I know I've heard recently that, can't remember the guy's name, but he found a computer code embedded in the universe. And so a lot of people have gone the way of simulation theory, or they've said that possibly, this code exists like it's divine. Whereas that tells me that there's a possibility that space as we know it was designed on a computer program, in which case it would be very easy to send out a satellite to, say, Jovian orbit. So they're going to send it to Jupiter. And then the data comes back and tells the scientists exactly where this craft is and what orbit it's. Well, if you've sent it into a computer program, well, then you're going to you're going to get data sent back that makes sense. The one guy that said that the Earth was flat, was that just a one-time mention? He didn't try and tell you anything about that, or why he believed that?
I think we talked about it a couple of times. He brought it to my attention, and this was before I was a truther, so I wasn't really looking into things. This was right before I started to look into conspiracies.
Mm-hmm.
I think he told me about it. I kind of laughed about it. And then I asked him again, what makes you think that? Why would you think that? But I think that he was already uncomfortable with sharing it with me because he didn't really get into detail. He didn't try to share more information with me. I really want to talk to him. I don't know where he is. I had a friend of mine find him. And so he did find him in the employee database, but he gave him my phone number and he hasn't contacted me back. So if you're listening right now, call me because he would really help, I think.
Yeah.
Because he's an engineer and he's somebody trustworthy to other people.
Well, I mean, I want to tell you too, just a huge thank you for having the guts and to come out and actually speak out, because I know a lot of people that probably did work for NASA that wouldn't come out even if they did start to see things that weren't adding up. It's a scary thing, especially because a lot of us point out to different people. There's a lot of different climate scientists that have died due to various circumstances over the last few years. Going back even further, the Thomas Ronald Barron, and that was after the Apollo 1 accident. There's quite a lot of people that seem to meet their quick demise when they question these things. So I just think it's huge to know that you've taken that brave step.
Because I'm not working, it's okay. I don't have my career at stake. And so we have to think about the people who are still working. They have their career to think about. I wouldn't probably share anything if I was still working.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of people say, and this is probably, it's probably the number one thing that I hear from people that say, why they think the flat Earth idea is impossible. And also it's probably the one thing, and I don't have thoughts like this anymore, but I certainly did 6 months or a year ago, to where I really have to sit down and just think and just say, man, where are the whistleblowers? Why is there no NASA employee that. So I think it's important that you said that I think people don't recognize that, when somebody's got their job on the line, they don't see any positive coming about it. They probably look at it and think, if I come out and say anything, they're just going to, demonize me, and I'll lose my job, and I lose my career, my family struggles. So I think that's really important to point out, because I think that's the truth. And once you've, I'm sure when you're debriefed, you said you still cannot, even though you're debriefed, you're still under that non-disclosure agreement, correct?
For life. Yeah.
For life.
I can never disclose anything that I was briefed into.
Right. And that means to anybody, husband, mother, father,
Correct.
anybody, right?
Nobody.
Right.
Nobody ever.
So, the same thing would be.
So if somebody was briefed into something to do with flat Earth, then they would never disclose it.
Or if the astronauts themselves, let's say, they sign up and they, are getting ready to go to the moon, and then they're told, well, we don't know how to go yet, but we really want to get children to study the STEM sciences, and so we're going to say that we did, so that people keep trying and keep excelling in science and math. And that would be something too, that once those non-disclosure agreements were signed, and most of those guys are military too. Did a lot of the people that you work with, are they all military at Lockheed and NASA, or were what percentage would you say?
Like 50% civilian, 50% military. A lot of people who are civilian are prior military. I do want to say this, that a lot of our pilots at NASA, I don't know, but I know a lot of them personally, or I did. I don't know them now, but I did. And I would almost bet that they know the true shape of the Earth, because they're up there all the time, and they're open to more information than we are. They're able to get more information. So I think that those pilots know, but again, they cannot disclose it.
Right.
Even to their own families.
I've heard an interview, and I don't remember the guy's name, but one of the guys that flew, he got his astronaut wings in one of those, the planes that went, I think he went 50 miles. When asked in an interview if he saw the curvature of the Earth at that 50 miles, he said no, that he couldn't see it. That's, 50 miles high, whereas they're telling us that, that's what, 250,000, where they're telling us that, we can start seeing it at 30 or 40.
Right.
And that guy actually ended up becoming an astronaut. And I think what he said was he didn't ever see the curvature of the Earth until he was in the shuttle. But he did say about the plane that was at 50 miles that he didn't see it. So you said about the military, and I think that's just kind of important to point out too, that when somebody is military, do they also take an oath, not a non-disclosure, but is it kind of an oath to keep certain secrets?
Oh yeah. Anybody who's in the military, or I was DOD, so I was DOD civilian. I wasn't military, but I have tons and tons of friends who are military. You basically don't talk about anything to anybody.
I guess that's always baffles me too.
Awkward.
Yeah, and what baffles me is like when they say they're talking about Apollo 11 and the astronauts going to the moon, and they describe Neil Armstrong as being civilian. That always baffled me, because I said, why would they call people civilians once they are former Army or former military? Is there a reason behind? I guess there's nothing else that we do that.
No, you wouldn't call him a civilian. Definitely not.
Right, which is just funny to me that all these astronauts, they say only half of them are civilian, but really when you go back and look at their careers, they were in the military. It's just they came out and then went into NASA, and they call those people civilians, which makes no sense. I described it like be like calling Barry Bonds an amateur baseball player just because he doesn't play professionally anymore. Well, he's not an amateur.
Correct.
But that's kind of how they make it sound like these people who worked with the military, just because they've stopped in the military and gone on to NASA, they still have to hold all the secrets that they would have learned throughout the military, and that might be the people that they go after. Anything else that you think that you wanted to voice that I didn't ask you, or anything particular about, anything at NASA that you can remember? I know you were at Edwards, so did you get to see a lot of launches, or any?
I saw the space shuttle land several times, because when they had bad weather in Florida, they would land at Edwards. Of course, at the time, I wasn't thinking anything about it. I just thought it was really cool.
Mhm.
I've seen the space shuttle on the back of the jumbo jet flying away. I've been pretty up close to it. Never been inside.
Were you close to it when it
it's
landed?
Really exciting. Once I was on a flight line, but I wasn't right up to it.
Right.
A lot of my friends worked where they were able to go inside.
Do you remember hearing it when it landed? I know there's a lot of video of it, but it certainly.
Sonic boom. Yeah, we did have a sonic boom, which is another thing. If it's a glider, would it have a sonic boom? Wouldn't it require an engine? I'm not sure.
No,
I'm not
it
a scientist.
should. If it's coming back through the atmosphere, I guess, technically speaking, if as soon as it breaks the sound barrier, it's going to cause that sonic boom. But I have questions about that too. The SpaceX rocket that gets launched up and comes back, the last two, the rocket has beat the sonic boom to the ground, which I cannot make any sense of that, because
Wow.
the rocket has to slow down, before it lands, whereas the sound should be traveling at the speed of sound. So it should definitely beat the rocket to the earth, but it doesn't. You remember hearing it actually land? I don't know if you've seen video. There's actually video of it landing, and it sounds like a jet airplane landing, where it should not have jets.
Right.
Oh, you do remember that?
Yep, I do remember that.
But never witnessed any actual launches then?
We did not launch the space shuttle from Edwards, no.
No, but I mean like rockets or anything like that at all?
No, Vandenberg, we had a lot of rockets at Vandenberg, but Edwards is flight test. So the majority of what we had at the base was testing, different aircraft, not speculated.
Mm-hmm.
F-16, F-22, and of course F-35 is what we got. I was on that program as well. So flight test is basically what we did out there.
Is there anything else computer-wise that is interesting, or did you notice any compartmentalization in the way computers operated versus maybe other businesses or other corporations?
Well, because each person would have been briefed into different portions of, so say NASA has 2,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Within that 2,000 people, you have groups of people who are on specific programs. And so only that group of people would have access to whatever they're working on. It wasn't like everybody could access the same data. So, yeah.
And how was that stuff? How did that work with computer wise? It would just be that they were closed off, like partitioned to only
Correct.
What they were working on.
And everything was encrypted.
Mm-hmm. I think people would want to hear maybe your story just in the last, you said it was a year ago that you found out, or that you realized the earth was flat, or how long has it been?
So this is what happened.
Yeah, please tell us.
As a truth seeker and a conspiracy researcher, I was always looking for different information, always researching for more stuff. And I had seen flat earth videos on YouTube, but never watched one. I had just seen them as a suggestion. And I decided to watch one. And this was Tiger Dan and his 75 biblical proofs of flat earth. Tiger Dan is a different story, so we don't have to get into that. But I watched that video, and it changed my entire life. I found, and I'm a Christian, and not all flat earthers are Christians, but I am, and I found that the Bible proved flat earth. And so that started my journey. And for several weeks, I watched video after video after video, a lot of Eric Today, a lot of your stuff actually, Jen. You had a lot to do with my ability to comprehend it. There's a ton of guys. I've met Matthew Powerland as well, and a lot of his stuff is pretty good. He's also, he's not part of NASA. He was an artist that they hired, and he's got quite a story as well. But it was an emotional roller coaster, and I wasn't prepared because I was prior aerospace.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't prepared to question that's a huge thing. It's huge. It's not like a little thing to me. This is bigger than most things, anything.
Yeah, bigger than anything.
And,
I feel the same way.
Yeah, it really is. Some people think flat earth is just a very basic concept, but to me, it's huge because I had to rearrange my entire thinking, my whole concept of life.
Would you say that it
And,
makes more sense now? Life?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. It's peaceful. I believe God is right above us, the creator who created this environment for us. He's right above us. He's not a bazillion galaxies away. He's close, and I feel peaceful about it. It took a while. I went through a lot of emotions, up and down and all around it. And then finally, I just had peace, and that's where I am now.
Good. Yeah, I'd say I'm in the same place. That I was always at a position where I just didn't understand life or didn't understand where we were, or, nothing made sense. And the flat earth has really made sense of things. Do I still have a million questions? Of course. But to understand the foundation, I think that's the part that people don't understand is all you need to do to get people to believe a lie is to lay the foundational lie. And then if people believe that, then you can change things and kind of look at it as a pyramid. Once you've laid that base, you can do a lot of things up top and get away with it. And I think that's what they did. And, I just tip my cap to them, if they want to be deceitful little buggers, but it just seems to me like it's very easy. Once you've laid that foundational lie, we live on a ball, and you teach that to children when they're in second grade. Then after that, lots of things can change. And if people just look at it, things have gone crazy. I mean, all you need to do is go back and look at all the promises of space travel, or that you would be going up in these balloons, or there's Virgin Galactic, and then there's X Corp, and there's Google Lunar Prize, all these things that have constantly been thrown at us. If you really look at it, none of them have ever come to fruition. And,
well, they also don't have any actual photos, photographic evidence, but they have CGI.
Yep.
And I just want to say this: if you have actual photos, you would present them. You wouldn't hide those.
Yep.
You wouldn't use CGI. And that was probably one of the biggest things for me was I tried to find a picture of Earth from space that was real, that wasn't tampered with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure with our technology, you can take a camera and you can take a picture from space, but they have not done that.
Beautiful point. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, and they just let NASA get away with murder. And I mean that in the sense of, if satellites are real and everything that they've taught us, we know what cameras are like. It's 2017. We can all go out for $300 and buy a 18 megapixel, 30 time optical zoom, really nice camera. And if space is what they taught us, then there shouldn't be an issue with them simply taking a picture from space of the Earth. Especially they're able to send out these, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, I think right now they say they're 13 or 14 billion miles from Earth and still sending data back. And yet when you ask, well, why are they only composite images of the Earth? Then the statement you always get is because satellites are too close to take a picture of the whole Earth. But again, if they cared about what people want, then they would send a satellite out a little bit further and take a picture of the Earth. And they didn't do that until 2015, which is again after this flat Earth thing came up. And they did the one from the NASA moon landings. And that's the struggle. I think that's the hardest thing for me to convince people is you have to start there. That if somebody still believes we went to the moon, then you'll never see this. You can't.
Correct.
You have to see and understand that you were taught as a child that people went to the moon, and you may not have ever been thinking that when you looked up at the moon, but it's in the back of your head. They understand these, they're Nazi scientists, right? That came over in Project Paperclip, and they understood the psyche. They understood how to get this stuff into children's minds young. And that's the problem, is that you've got this preconceived notion that we all grew up with. And that's what a lot of people can't kick. And I understand, it's tough.
I'll tell you too, in 2009 was when I woke up to all the conspiracies. And one of the biggest ones was the fake moon landings. So from 2009 until last year, I didn't believe in the moon landing, but I never second guessed the shape of the Earth.
Right. Well, I think that's why, if a lot of people, if you just look up right now on Google, if you just looked up NASA whistleblower, everything that you'll see is somebody talking about aliens. They allow that. All the astronauts have spoken out and said, oh, we saw aliens. There was aliens on the moon. We were told not to go back. And I think that the reason for that is simple, that once you've convinced people that aliens exist or that these astronauts are actually up there, well, then the one thing that still gets hidden is the shape of the Earth. Because,
Right.
that's the one thing that they can say everything else, and they can say that there was aliens on the moon, but this way they keep that one big lie alive. One of the questions I was going to ask you earlier, I forgot. Would you say that generally people that worked with you were happy with their job? Were people at NASA content?
Definitely. It was, like I said, it was a great environment. They're still there.
Mhm.
That's a lifelong career. The only issue that I can say for sure is that a lot of people get sick out there, and this is a different conspiracy theory, but cancer is crazy high at Edwards Air Force Base. I've lost tons and tons of friends. Whatever's going on out there that they're putting in either the ground or the water or both is affecting people. And so other than people getting really sick and dying,
Right.
it's a great environment. But environmentally speaking, it's not a great environment.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I just noticed that because my wife and I, in doing parodies and things like that, I mean, there's so many videos of NASA employees doing this song or that song, or it just looks like the whole day was spent, or 2 days of them filming these songs, or I don't know, it just looks like a weird environment. I came from a drugstore, which, we certainly never had a day where the store just danced around and made up parody songs. We actually had real work to do. So it always surprises me when I see things like that. But I can understand what you're saying. They want to make it a great place to work. And you said that they would always have events or something. Was that like barbecues or something?
Yeah, so there would be barbecues, and this is true for the Air Force as well. There's always something to look forward to. Something's coming up in this month. Whether we have a band come out and do music in the auditorium, or just different events based on like Black History Month or that type of thing. They would always make sure that we all celebrated, and we did it as large groups. And food was typically involved. I would say yes. Everybody who works there is probably very happy, content, and wouldn't want to rock the boat for sure, because they're making great money and they're happy.
That's what I was going to ask you. Not that you have to give us a amount or anything, but was the money good? I mean, it was.
I was entry level, and it was a long time ago when I was with NASA. So if I had to think about the time period, it was pretty good money. I bought my first house. I was able to buy my first house, and decent house.
So probably making more than people who might have been around the same age, but maybe not working with those particular companies.
Slightly more, not a huge amount more, because like I said, I was entry level.
Right.
People who were higher up definitely made more.
Okay. Last thing would be, do you have a email address or something you want to give out, if anybody, or maybe your Facebook name or something, so if people want to ask you a question or something, would you be open to that?
Yeah, we can do my Facebook. I'm Cindy, CYNDI Holland, HOLLAND, and it's just my picture is my main picture. If someone was trying to find me, they said there's a bunch of Cindy Hollands. I'm in Arizona. I don't know if that helps to narrow it down.
Oh, the one thing I was going to ask you about your son, you said you told your son something he wasn't surprised. What was that again, that story?
Oh, so my son is, he's the guy who told me about all the conspiracy theories in 2009. I was an Air Force employee and was just living the dream. I was happy. Things were going my way. And he said, Mom, what you think is real isn't real. And he said, you just need to look into some things. And so I'm so thankful for him. He's a smart guy. He's very, very smart. And he's very awake and aware. So he told me to look into some things. So I did. And I found a whole bunch of truth. One of those things was the fake moon landing. And I told him, I said, we didn't go to the moon. I saw the documentary and it shows all these things that are fake. And I said, I'm a thinker, so I can see this is fake.
Mhm.
And he said, yeah, I know it's fake. And I said, did you know that when I worked for NASA, I heard these two guys laughing that people believed in the moon landing? And he said he wasn't surprised.
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised either. I would assume some
Right.
people out there have to know. And, to me, I just think the one thing is, think of the USA. Would they take a chance? Just think of the PR nightmare it would have been if the craft would have crashed. They would have
Right.
never shown that live. There's no way they would have ever. They gave people the
Yeah.
day off work so that they could watch it with their children, and it's just
Right.
all so ridiculous for anybody to think that that's. And if it was that easy, if it was, we were so sure that we would just go there and land on a foreign body, and then they would go back. And as I've said before, they talk about all these meteorites or meteors possibly hitting Earth, or an asteroid.
Right.
It destroyed the dinosaurs and everything. Well, then why don't
Right.
we have a base on the moon to protect humanity? And these are the kind of
That's
things when you're talking about giving an organization $50 million a day. I mean, that is ridiculous, that kind of money. And then to not have things like that, like pictures of the Earth. I mean, people have a problem with, say I've got a Patreon and people can go there and donate if they want to. And people think there's such a big problem with me doing that, but they don't understand that we have a problem with NASA, and I don't get a choice whether or not to give them money. Like they get my money. And if I don't pay them, they'll come to my house and take it from me.
That's right.
So it just bothers me that people don't see that, and that it's our money. And so I understand that when you give taxes, that NASA's got its job it's got to do. Okay, that's fine. But they should care about the people that gave them the money. And
Right.
if people want a nice video of Earth from space or from the moon, then I don't think it's right for them just to say, oh no, they've got other things to do. And in that, I guess they include driving remote control robots on Mars and flying the Space Center or the space station around the Earth. So for the last 17 years doing nothing, just
Right.
sending astronauts up and back to this thing for no reason that
And
costs
that's been my question:
millions.
is what are they doing in the ISS? What is so important that they're flying around the Earth at 17,500 miles per hour and playing with food or water or whatever it is that they're showing at the moment? What is it that's so important that's being done? And if they have to work on the International Space Station and go outside of the ship,
Yeah, it just makes
I
no
mean,
sense. It's
up on the moon, yeah.
you wouldn't even put it together the way it's put together. I mean, there's no way. There's so many of those things that can be put inside the craft so that they can be fixed from
Right.
inside. Why would they be susceptible to micrometeoroids and all the radiation? There's so many things that could go wrong. It just seems to me that they put them out there so that gives them an excuse to go out there and do their spacewalks. And the other thing I can't
Right.
believe is, I heard Neil Armstrong recently going off about how terrible it is that we don't have access to space, that the United States has to, purchase flights up on the Soyuz rocket. And it's so funny because we have 4 space shuttles. And think about that. I mean, we had a space shuttle, or 4 of them, 2 of them were destroyed, but there's 4 left that could get to space, could go into orbit, could dock with the space station. And they just stopped using it. They just said, we're not going to
They
use
just
these anymore.
ended the program, and I had the same question at the time.
Yeah.
Why are they ending the space shuttle program? And this is another thing. In 2009, 2008, I took a temporary position with a company called Bastion Technologies in Canoga Park. And the program that I was working on was creating the new engine for the supposed new space shuttle that they were building. That I think I was on that program for only 8 months before I went back to the Air Force, and they canceled it. They canceled the program. I don't know why. Nothing was ever said.
I don't remember exactly where. I know it was in Alabama. I'll have to look up the story, but there was one where NASA canceled this one program but they forgot to tell the people at the program. So like for a year after, they kept working, but it was already canceled.
wow.
I got to find it.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it was hilarious. But they ended up spending, a couple $100 million on
Right.
wasted time and effort. And yeah, I just don't understand with the space shuttle. It's like it obviously went and came back. So okay, if there's a couple flaws in it, then you fix them for a couple $100 million, and you've got your shuttle to
Right.
space. But now it's so obvious to me that it's a theft of taxpayers' money, because the only
Right.
reason you would scrap the shuttles is if you want more money. And if you have the shuttles, then you can't ask for money, because they'll just say, you don't need money for that. You can fly up in the shuttle. So by scrapping them, then they can say, well, now we need more money because we need to build something to get to space. It's like, you had
That's
something to
right.
get to space.
Which they didn't follow through with.
Nope. Yeah, it's crazy to me. So I just think it's really brave of you. I haven't had very many people speak out. I have had, maybe 3 or 4 people that have said they work for NASA or the military who have, written me emails, but they won't go public at all. Even if I offered to mask their voice, to use a fake name, and they just say no, that it's something they're not really, they're
Is that
going to.
because they're still employed, or were they retired? Or...
No, all of them were still employed. I haven't gotten anything from anybody retired. So yeah, they just said that, even if I, like I said, offered a fake name or anything, they just said they don't feel safe doing it. Maybe they will eventually, so if they're listening to this, I am okay with, I think it just helps people to hear, people that worked with NASA, and that it's not just a bunch of crazy people who think this, that even people who worked right there, were in the thick of things, can also see when there's a lack of evidence, especially for something that's taught to you as a child, it's taught to second graders and first graders. And so it should be such a matter of fact that we can just go and find all the evidence right there in front of us. And, I think for me, the biggest clue is the fact that they taught us flat Earth was dumb. Like you said, when your friend told you the Earth was flat, you immediately think of the picture that we've all seen with the water falling off the edge, or that, and that was taught to us. It wasn't something that we all just came up with. It was taught. It is the cut low of all cut lows. It is the one thing you don't want to be called by somebody, is to be called a flat earther.
Right.
And there's a reason for that, especially when you start looking into this and you see, and I would say even people like, Red's Rhetoric, or some of these guys that believe in the globe, they would have to admit, they would never do it publicly, but in themselves would have to admit that there's enough merit about the flat earth that it probably shouldn't have been considered so, moronic. And that's the kind of a clue that you should look at. Like, why was one thing taught fact and the other thing taught moronic, idiotic, when they both kind of have some, some things that work, some things that don't? That's a big clue for me. Anything you want to say to people out there, or people that might be in the same position that you are?
I say just don't fear it. I don't know if the elite are trying to allow this. Shaquille O'Neal apparently came out flat Earth yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if there's a purposeful leak for this. I'm not really sure what they're doing, but I would say don't be afraid. Just be who you are. And if it's true, truth is going to come out. It's just, you can't hide it forever. They've hid it for 500 years, maybe less. I encourage people to just be truthful to who they are. And also, if you haven't looked into it, just look. Just give it some time and look into it. Don't call it crazy unless you do the research, and be open-minded.
We've got the 2 co-hosts on the show still. Morgal, are you there? If you're there.
I am here.
Awesome. Did you have any questions you wanted to ask? Did you have a few minutes for a few questions if they've got them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they said, I guess I don't need to repeat what she said. Go ahead, John, and I'll repeat it.
One thing that I wanted to ask her, she said, and I'm sort of paraphrasing here, but that she believes the Earth is flat, but she can't prove it. Now, is that because of an NDA, or is that because of something else?
So he said that you said that you do think that the Earth is flat, but you can't prove it. Is that because of an NDA or something else?
No, that's strictly because technically wise, I don't have a spaceship. Space doesn't exist, but I don't have a way to get up high enough. Mm-hmm. I know we have had a lot of people with balloons that have sent balloons up with cameras, and you can see there's no curve, but you can't see the entire Earth. And so what I mean by that is that the people who can prove it are hiding that so we can't see it. Well, I'm not sure how we're ever going to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So it's good to meet you. Just sort of a comment, most NASA employees and contractors, would you say that the majority of them, and I guess you probably already answered it, but most of them have no idea that the Earth is flat?
Correct. I don't believe that they've even thought about it.
Right. And one thing that I would mention is that even if you know it and you try to tell people, well, first of all, you're going to lose your job and your credibility, but nobody's going to believe you anyway, right? So why open your mouth?
Right.
Right. And I posted it on my Facebook, and I'm friends on Facebook with many people that I used to work with. I can tell you that I don't think they're following me anymore because they don't comment on anything I post.
Wow. Okay. Well, the only other thing I would just mention is that in terms, you guys mentioned this former military being called civilian. You know, technically, I guess they say that if you're under the payroll of the U.S. government, under the military, then, you know, you're not a civilian. Although if you're privy to secret, top secret, classified information, then I guess, you know, you're sort of involved in it for life because you're under a gag order to talk about anything that you were technically briefed and debriefed on, right?
Correct.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you.
Bob, did you have anything?
No, I just wanted to thank Cindy for, you know, telling what she knows and coming on and talking about it. Like you said, Jaron, that's really brave, and you're awesome, Cindy. Thank you so much for doing this.
No, you guys are awesome. Thank you. I'm privileged to be part of this. I feel empowered. I think information is power. And so this is, for me, this is great. And I'm definitely available for more questions. Jaron does have my email address, so any of you guys can get that from him if you want. I just don't want it public. But yeah, send me questions on Facebook, and I'm honored to be part of this. It's awesome.
All right, Cindy, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon. So thanks again.
All right, you guys. Take care. Have a good day.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Wow. Excellent. That was really good, Jaron. She's really a brave individual.